I want New Brunswickers to know that I have consulted with our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jennifer Russell, and she advised that we could safely proceed with a general election. Je veux que les gens de New Brunswick sachent que j'ai consulté notre médecin hygiéniste en chef, Dr. Jennifer Russell, et elle me dit que nous pouvons procéder en toute sécurité à des élections générales. I have just met with Her Honor, the Honorable Brenda Murphy. Je viens d'avoir un reconnaître avec son honneur l'Honorable Brenda Murphy. I have formally asked the Lieutenant Governor to dissolve the 59th Legislative Assembly of New Brunswick. J'ai officiellement demandé à le Lieutenant Gouverneur de dissoudre l'Assemblée législative de Nouveau-Brunswick. A general election will be held on September 14th, 2020. Une élection générale aura lieu le 14 septembre 2020. Over the next 28 days, New Brunswickers will decide who will govern New Brunswick. Au cours des 28 prochains jours, les gens de New Brunswick décideront qui gouvernera la province. We are in a pandemic, and the coming election campaign will not be like any election we have ever experienced. Nous sommes dans une pandémie, et la prochaine campagne électorale sera unique. As difficult as it is to imagine, our candidates will not be going door to door, and they will not be leaving any hand-delivered paper or brochures on your doorstep. Candidates will need to be creative and innovative. We had been talking with Elections New Brunswick, Elections New Brunswick. We've been talking with Public Health, and they've made recommendations. I asked specifically just on late Friday afternoon, when talks broke down, I asked about the election going forward. I was informed of a letter that's gone to Elections New Brunswick, and as I noted here, that we could have an election safely, but it would be different. I think what we see here is that we're doing a lot of things in our province differently, but we're still doing them. Businesses are opening, businesses are expanding, people are moving around, they're shopping, they're traveling, and we've done that because we have protected our province, and we continue to do so. The cases that we've seen of recent are traced, tracked, and they're all from travel. And in the discussion I had about the current cases, everyone identified, everyone, and all the tracing being done. And so public health feeling very good about where we are. We've seen tremendous response from our public health and the people that are in the system to contact trace. We've seen tremendous diligence for the people protecting our borders. So I would say that we can make excuses and take a chance on what'll come forward, and then we're in a situation where the politics just is played as always in the legislature. Or we can take this opportunity and say, okay, let's make a decision. And let's decide right now whether we're going to have the ability to manage through the recovery. And as we have seen, leading the way in many categories in the country. But can we do it safely? Absolutely. Are we going to change how we do it? Most certainly. And it starts with what I mentioned today about door knocking and brochures left at doorsteps. It'll be continuing with public gatherings and how we can space. This will be an election like none other probably in North America has ever been conducted in the past. The choice was made last week when the Liberals walked out of our meetings. The choice was made. We had very meaningful discussions, and I think you've seen my colleagues from the Green Party and the People's Alliance both saying the same thing. Caucus were earnest. They were getting just down to having real discussions. We had worked through a supply agreement basically of how it would work and the duration, and now we're talking about specific items, what we could move forward on, but just starting to get into real discussions on items, and that's when the opposition broke for a caucus meeting and never came back. So when they never returned and said we don't want any part of working together going forward in a productive way through this process, I said at the very beginning of the discussions that the situation we had was getting stability, and quite you know, my situation and the discussions with Mr. Vickers, I feel he had a lot of pressure not to get an agreement, not to have a path forward. And I think that's extremely unfortunate.
Once again, Blaine Higgs is listening to his political observers instead of listening to the people of New Brunswick. New Brunswickers are in the election they do not want nor need. Despite the Liberal Party's repeated and sincere offers to ensure a stable path well into 2021, Blaine Higgs chose to send New Brunswickers to the polls in the middle of a pandemic. The Premier of New Brunswick chose political opportunism instead of the health and safety of our citizens. Under Blaine Higgs, there is only one way, his way. This was made abundantly clear during recent discussions with all party leaders, the so-called negotiations to avoid an election. After waiting 34 days to respond to the Liberal Party's offer to secure stability in the legislature and to see us safely through the pandemic, his counteroffer was to circumvent legislative and parliamentary tradition, to seize a majority, to give majority powers to his minority government. Blaine Higgs wants us to implement his plan, but he doesn't want to listen to options for any other plan. This is not Blaine Higgs' New Brunswick. It is your New Brunswick. So let's work together and bring back hope and opportunity to every corner of this beautiful province. The Liberal Party has assured Premier Higgs and his government that we would not cause an election this year and well into next. And if the pandemic was in fact still going on in March, again, we would not cause an election to put New Brunswickers' health and safety at risk. The very nature of your question, sir, shows the irresponsibility of having called this election that New Brunswickers don't want nor need. My understanding from the committee hearings where the Chief Election Officer, Kim Poffenroff, clearly testified, once he makes this decision, once he took that walk over to Government House, the chances of stopping this election, there is no mandate for it. So this is his decision. He is the one that decided to walk over to Government House and to cause the situation we now find ourselves in.
So it's very alarming that the Premier has called an election during the pandemic when people are so concerned with their health, with the health of their children, the health of their elders, their parents, and when so many other concerns are going on. It is remarkable the number of people who are still self-isolating and the number of people who are working from home. So this was an unneeded election. We lost 9 pieces of legislation that were waiting for third reading or royal assent that we worked very hard on, and now they have been lost, died on the order paper, as they say.
Thanking the Premier for the COVID Cabinet Committee and the work that we've been doing in that, and the results that we see in the province today, the fact that New Brunswick is leading not only the country, but really most of North America, if not all of North America, in the low number of cases and the low death toll that COVID has taken on our province here. And I think it's a large part on New Brunswickers and their responsibility to keep themselves safe and taking it serious. And I think it also reflects the fact that you had all parties working together to ensure that there's good, proper policies to also help keep New Brunswickers safe. What I find interesting is being part of that COVID Cabinet Committee. We met with the Chief Medical Officer, we met with other experts on COVID in relation to public policy, and we all unanimously agreed to withhold and to postpone municipal elections. And we did it because of the pandemic. So despite municipal elections being put on hold, now it seems okay to have a provincial election. So that's certainly a head scratcher, and I think that's something that the people of New Brunswick have to ask themselves when they go to the polls on the day of voting. I guess I just want to reiterate the importance of a minority government. The people that I talk to across this province, the vast majority agree. Minority government, which we haven't had in over 100 years, has made for good government. We've seen good changes in the province. We've seen a sense of stability that we haven't seen in quite some time. We've seen varying opinions being brought to the table, and I think the people of New Brunswick like that. I think the people of New Brunswick are genuinely tired of majority governments and one-party rules.